Hello everyone, welcome back to the Card Combo Show with me, Chocobilly, and this week I'm going to be looking at the Final Fantasy X customizable starter deck from Opus 16. It's something new to Final Fantasy TCG. We haven't had a customizable starter deck before. I'm not sure about other card games, but I'm not too familiar with them anyway. But it's something new and really interesting, and you effectively get 4 decks out of the box. It comes as standard as Wind Water, I believe, but you've also got Fire in there, so you can go for Water Fire, Wind Fire, or if you really want, Tricolor, which definitely benefits the card like Braska. And there are a lot of really good cards in there as well. I don't think there is a single bad card, if I'm perfectly honest. The cards included are Jecht, Bahamut, Braska, Yuna, Lulu, Auron, Rikku, Wakka, Tidus, and Sin. And yeah, I don't think there's a single bad card out of any of these, to be honest. In fact, there are some very, very powerful cards, of which I'm going to combo now. So first up we have Jecht, who is a 5 CP 9k EX burst. When Jecht enters the field, choose one forward opponent controls, deal it 4,000 damage and 1,000 more damage for each category 10 character you control, and then put Jecht into the break zone, search for one light or dark character and add it to your hand. So, I mean, he might struggle a little bit because Fire already has a lot of good 5 CP 9k forwards, but him being an EX that deals a decent amount of damage at base level is pretty good, and you put him in a tribal deck, he becomes quite strong. And the fact that you can put him into the break zone to search for any one light or dark character is also very strong in my opinion, and he might work himself into some decks just for that effect alone. So Sin, obviously I'm not going to be talking about some of the combos that are actually within the starter deck itself because they should be fairly obvious. So I'm going to talk about some of the ways you can implement these cards outside of those decks. But yeah, Jecht, Sin even, spoilers. So being able to just search the S ready for Giga Graviton is super strong, so you can just focus on setting up your protection for Sin, not needing to worry about getting that card. So setting up protection, getting everything there ready so that Sin won't die when you use Giga Graviton, and then maybe at the end of your opponent's turn you put Jecht into the break zone, get yourself a Sin to hand, ready for the following turn, you can Giga Graviton S. Spiritus. Now this might seem like a bit of a strange card to go with Jecht, because if Spiritus is going to search you a forward and play it onto the field, why don't you just use Jecht to go get that card? The reason being is the fact that Spiritus is a bit of a lightning rod, and when your opponent sees you play Spiritus onto the field, or search Spiritus with Jecht, they know that they're going to have to get rid of Spiritus before they get rid of the forward that Spiritus brings in, because if they do get rid of that forward instead of Spiritus, you then get to remove something on your opponent's field. Now it might be a case that they actually don't have any forwards, at which point you have to gauge it when you use Spiritus, but ultimately, Spiritus to then search a forward and play it onto the field is also really strong as well in my opinion. Auron. Now Auron is obviously a late game card. You have to wait till your opponent's probably on 5 or 6 points of damage halfway through their deck, and when they've got a fairly substantial field presence, because one of the problems with Auron is the fact you can play them onto the field, maybe discard 5 cards, and they can just choose to break all the characters they control for all 6 times, but they only have like 3 characters, so if they've only got 3 backups and all they've done is lose their 3 backups, yeah, that still sucks for them, but ultimately they don't die. So yeah, wait until your opponent's got a big board and then play Auron, so then they have to consider, well, I could mill my cards, but then I only have like 5 cards left in my deck, or take a point of damage, but they're already on 6, so they can't do that, so then they have to lose their entire board, which if you're playing Auron late game, and you still got a decent board as well, that completely screws your opponent. Emperor Gestal, another card that can actually play Auron as well, but I really like Emperor Gestal because it's kind of like Dark's version of Star Sybil. You play him onto the field, you get to break something, and then you can crack him to play a Dark forward of 5 or less onto the field. Aerith, I should probably mention a few light cards, shouldn't I? But Aerith is a very, very strong card, and the fact that Jecht is on fire means he fits nicely into a 7 deck if you want to put him there. And this is what I mean about having Jecht, not for his entry ability, but more for his just getting you a card. If you put Jecht into the break zone to search that Aerith, to then play Aerith onto the field to get back, I don't know, Biggs and Wedge from your break zone, you play them onto the field for 1 CP each because you already got Jessie, then you play Barrett 0 maybe because you've already got the Jessie backup, and yeah, you just being able to play Jecht to search Aerith to then get yourself effectively what is 4 forwards onto the field for effectively free, it's just a massive power play on your part, and I think that's one of the big parts of Jecht here is the fact that he can really, just finding that one card you need is super good. Now he can search obviously characters as well, which is excellent, but yeah, he won't be able to search you things like Arc or Medine. And Nox Suzaku. So you can only play Nox Suzaku if a forward you control has been put from the field into the break zone this turn, which obviously you would have done with Jecht. You put Jecht into the break zone to search you Nox Suzaku. You can then play Nox Suzaku, and then hopefully at the end of your turn you get to play something onto the field. Okay, next up we've got Bahamut. So he is a 6 CP fire summon. Before paying the cost to cast Bahamut, you can remove 10 fire characters and or category 10 characters in your break zone from the game to reduce the cost required to cast Bahamut by 5. And then choose one forward, deal 10,000 damage if it is put from the field into the break zone this turn, remove from the game instead. So pretty standard Bahamut effect there, it's dealing damage, then remove it hopefully. But ultimately the fact you get to reduce Bahamut's cost to only 1 CP is very strong. Now, what's good is the fact that it's category 10 characters or category, fire characters, but you can't get rid of something like, I don't know, fire Auron to then technically count that as 2. It's and or fire characters and 10 cards. So, yeah, it has to be a total of 10 cards. But him only costing 1 CP is really good. So, something like Fang, maybe you don't have the cards in the break zone to get rid of, or you don't want to just yet. Either way, making Bahamut only become a 4 CP 10k dealing summon is quite strong. Fang probably won't stick around long enough to actually see this effect, but again, that's nice because it works as a lightning rod. It means your opponent has to expel funds to get rid of Fang, and then you cast Bahamut anyway, and they're still screwed. And that's the good thing, is that if Fang is killed and put into the break zone, she then still can reduce the cost by putting her, or adding her to the part of Bahamut's cost reduction, to then make him only cost 1 anyway. Muti, let's say you do make him cost 1, and then you got Muti on the field, and you pay Muti, or sorry, you dull Muti to pay the 1 CP, you've cast Bahamut, you get to reactivate Muti, so Bahamut has effectively cost you nothing. All you've done is remove 10 things from your break zone. Bahamut. So, what's good about these cards, the fact that the Bahamut summon only removes characters from your break zone, not summons, and the Bahamut forward only checks the summons in your break zone. So realistically, these two work nicely together, and ultimately you can cast the big Bahamut summon, which then counts towards Bahamut's effect when he attacks or does stuff. So yeah, just an excellent way to be able to just really empower your field, whilst still dealing loads of crap to your opponent's field as well. Black Mage. So you can put Black Mage into the break zone. Maybe, let's say you discard a fire forward and you put Black Mage into the break zone. That could then put your fire forward or fire character count total to 10 in your break zone, which you can then remove to use Bahamut, which you retrieved with Black Mage. Nice. Summoner. Summoner doesn't get played much these days, but I still think it's a very, very good card. The fact that, yeah, it's a 3 CP, so it's quite slow, but you can then just at any point crack it to play a 6 CP summon, and something like Bahamut, which deals 10k something and then removes it, is very, very powerful. And Summoner is one of those cards which gets better over time. The more summons it can play, the better it becomes. And yeah, just being able to use Summoner to then play Bahamut and not have to worry about the cost reduction, not having to worry about getting things out of your break zone, just kill something. Rydia. It's not hard to get Rydia to 6 counters, so yeah, again, not having to worry about cost reduction on Bahamut because Rydia's got 6 counters on her, so you just cast Bahamut for free, remove something for 10k. Nice. Alright, next up we have Braska, and what a battle laughs this dude is. So, he's a 2 CP 5k forward. You may use Braska's special ability by discarding a summon instead of discarding a card named Braska as part of the cost, and then his 2 S abilities are Summon S, choose one forward, deal it 7k, or Grand Summon S, 2 fire, 1 wind and 1 water. Choose 2 forwards opponent controls, break them, Braska deals your opponent 1 point of damage. So basically it means that you can, instead of paying the S or discarding a Braska for the S abilities, you can discard any summon for that, which is really, really good. It doesn't count towards the element cost for the Grand Summon though, unfortunately, but still, just being able to discard effectively now, you can discard any summon to deal 7k to something. There's very little in this game which costs outright 2 CP to deal 7k to something, because yes, there are summons you can pay 2 CP and deal 7k to something, but if that was a summon, let's say you discarded a card to play that summon is also 2 CP out of your hand. So this is outright just 2 CP, 10k to something. That's super strong, if you ask me anyway. So Bahamut, yeah, you just keep on discarding fire summons into your break zone, because Bahamut only actually checks the summons in your break zone, doesn't matter if they're Bahamut or not. So yeah, you can just keep on discarding summons into your break zone to deal 7k to something, whilst also making your Bahamut forward even bigger. Ifrita, similar sort of thing. Ifrita checks how many Ifrit you have in the break zone, so you could maybe discard an Ifrit, then cast Ifrita, get 3 of Ifrita's effects, whilst also doing 7k through Braska's effect. Philo, so Let's talk about the elephant in the room, the fact that you have to pay 3 different elements for Braska's S ability Grand Summon, and it's also worth noting that your opponent has to have 2 forwards for its effect to work. If they only have 1 forward, you can't choose it, because Braska doesn't say choose up to 2 forwards, he just says choose 2 forwards your opponent controls. And paying those 3 elements can be kind of awkward. Yeah, you could maybe go into Earth if you really wanted to, but I think Philo is really good. So you could be in Fire, Wind. Obviously, you probably want to be in Fire most of all because of the fact of Braska. But ultimately, yeah, being Fire, Wind with Philo ready to generate you the water to be able to use Grand Summon, I think is probably the best way around it. You could technically go into, you know, Tricolor if you really wanted to, or there is the water backup which can generate fire, but then you are still looking for wind, and if you are in wind water mostly and you don't have a huge amount of fire, it seems strange to put something like Braska in there, but you could do just for the giggles. Either way, I think Fire Wind is the best setup for Braska, because Philo is such a good backup just to be able to get that water, just to be able to use his S ability. Zara. So obviously another way to generate some of the effects you want, to generate the elements you want, would be to play Sarah onto the field to then search you the light Princess Sarah backup, play that onto the field, and then she can become the wind if you want her to. So you could be in fire, water, and then find your element fixing that way. And finally, Varuna. So you use Grand Summon, you break 2 of your opponent's forwards, deal your opponent point damage, then Varuna becomes a forward. I mean, it's a 10 card, which is nice as well, and it fits nicely into a 10 themed deck, especially with the old school Jecht, because again, he deals damage based on the 10 characters you control. So Varuna counts towards that, regardless of whether or not it's a forward or not. Alright, Yuna. So, a 4CP 7k wind forward. When Yuna enters the field, select one of the 2 following actions. If you have received 5 points of damage or more, select up to 2 of the 2 following actions instead. Choose one Job Guardian of cost 2 or less in your break zone, play it onto the field, and activate all the backups you control. Damage 3, Yuna gains the Job Guardian forwards you control, gain plus 2000 power. So, yeah, another forward, another wind forward, which just reactivates all your backups. You've already got the likes of Vata and Rosa when you hit all effects, and just the fact that there's more wind forwards that are just reactivating all your backups really leans into the, look at all these things I'm playing for free, isn't it great? But yeah, so Kimahri is a Job Guardian, and Yuna could play him onto the field for free if you wanted to. Now, there's only, I think, 4, maybe 5, including this set, Job Guardians that are 2 CP or less. We might see more in Opus 16 as well, so I'm hoping for the likes of Lulu and Gata, so some of the other summoners or guardians from the Final Fantasy X universe. I think it'd be really cool to see those guys. And again, they would work with something like Yuna. But yeah, ultimately being able to play Yuna to play a color fixing Kimahri onto the field would be really cool. And maybe you're running a summoner deck with something like Kryl, which requires you to cast some, or when you cast summons from your opponent's break zone, you have to pay the correct elements. And Kimahri is a perfect way to be able to color fix for that. Rosa, yeah, so let's say you play Rosa onto the field, you then play Yuna onto the field to activate all your backups, you then play, I don't know, a little summon onto the, or you play a big summon if you want, and then you get to reactivate all your backups through Rosa, and then you can play something like Vata onto the field to reactivate all your backups, then you cast the 5th cast, and you get to play something onto the field through Rosa as well. It's just so easy to be able to hit Rosa's effect now, in my opinion. Obviously, your opponent probably has something to say about this, and they will interject at some point, but still, the fact that you can just keep on playing all these things for free, and just keep on going wide for your opponent to really have to deal with. I feel like having these sorts of cards now is really just enticing people to do or to have board wipes at the ready, and so you just end up spending a lot, and then they play something like Susano or Shantoto or whatever just to board wipe your opponent. It kind of sucks, but at the same point, still super strong. Fiona, so yeah, 2 wind, 2 nothing, or 2 anything, sorry, and a dull search one character added to your hand. So you could look at Yuna as effectively play Yuna onto the field. If you pay 1 CP, you then get to search any card. Not too bad. And Braska. So yeah, obviously she can already reactivate all the forwards, or sorry, all the backups you control. Make her a 3 CP forward. It's even easier to hit that effect. And you can, you know, play her onto the field for 3 CP. You've got 2 CP left over. Cast a summon with that, and then on the stack you get to reactivate everything, and then cast more things, and blah blah blah, pay stuff for free. Right, Lulu, a 3 CP 5k wind forward. When Lulu enters the field, choose one card named Yuna or summon it in your break zone. You may add it to your hand. When you cast a summon, choose up to 1 forward your opponent controls. Its power becomes 5,000 until the end of the turn. This effect will only trigger during your turn. wow, this is a very strong card. Now, she is a forward, which means that she's a lot easier to get rid of, but still. 1, she can retrieve your summon to hand. 2, her summon effect is just bonkers. It is so strong, and again, might be a bit of a lightning rod for your opponent. They see that come down, they're like, nah, you're not playing any summons, get rid of that card now. But still, she is a really, really powerful card, and I love her personally. This is the problem, is that everyone's going to love her because she's going to be so good. Making a forward power become 5k is really good. So something like Rosa. So again, being able to play something like Lulu to then get you maybe a summon back, which will reactivate all your backups or cast things for free, or just be able to get Yuna back to your hand to then play her to reactivate all your backups. With Rosa, just, you know, again, going ham with the whole I'm playing stuff for free. I also threw my little tie up here and making my neck cold. Sorry. Right, time to talk about some of the excellent summons that Lulu works with. So let's say you cast Belias on Lulu and your opponent has one big blocker forward. Now Lulu becomes a 6k first striker, and your opponent's forward that maybe, let's say, was 10k is now a 5k. That's just super strong. Amaterasu. Now obviously you need to be careful with this because Amaterasu normally gets played on your opponent's turn and Lulu's effect only works on your turn. But let's say you do something and that triggers one of your opponent's auto abilities, you can then cancel with Amaterasu and then Lulu will make it a 5k and kill it because, you know, there's nothing worse than casting Amaterasu on a forward that doesn't die to its effect. Brynhilde. I mean, you cast Brynhilde to deal 5k to something, its power becomes 5k, it dies, you draw a card. It's just so good. Chivalry. So you can cast Chivalry to, again, make potentially Lulu an 8k forward, and the forward that maybe is blocking Lulu, that then becomes a 5k, it dies, your opponent has to discard a card. Nice. Chokomog. Chokomog, it's kind of hard to kill any bigger forwards, but if those forwards become 5k, not so hard anymore. It's an EX burst as well, which is nice, but ultimately, let's say you've just got a few backups, Lulu and another forward, you cast Chokomog, your opponent's 10k forward becomes a 5k, takes 5k damage from Chokomog, dead. Hecaton Share. So again, just another nice way to be able to reduce your opponent's forward to make it well within kill range. Hecaton Share between that and something that won't die to 5k, which is a lot of forwards, and you get to kill it. It's just, Lulu's is excellent at killing things. Kind of dark. And Cyclops. So this is probably a better way. This is where sometimes cost reduction, or not cost reduction, sorry, what am I talking about? The order of things coming in matters, because Lulu ultimately will make something 5k, but she'll make it 5k before summons resolve. So you cast a summon, that goes on the stack, Lulu's effect triggers, that goes on the stack, then you go to resolve, Lulu's effect makes it 5k, and then Cyclops resolve, making it now only a 2k. Not to mention the fact that Cyclops affects all of your opponent's forwards as well, so they've got one forward, maybe it was a 10k, now it's only a 2k. That's hilarious. Again, Bismarck as well. This is really where these order matters. So Lulu would make something a 5k, then Bismarck would go to half its power, rounding down. So 5k would become 2.5k, which then becomes 2k. So you've just made something that was huge, now minuscule. And with something like, or being in wind as well, that means if you've got the Bismarck forward as well, or just, you know, any wind chip damage really, it's super easy to kill a 2k forward. So yeah, just great. Remora. So obviously you could potentially not kill something with Remora if you have less than 2 cards in hand, but you shouldn't really be doing that. So yeah, casting Remora gets you a card to hand, minuses for the amount of cards in your hand, or 2k for every card in your hand, but Lulu would make it a 5k, so you only need 3 cards in hand to be able to definitely kill it. But either way, Remora just super strong. Mind Flayer. This is the new meta, isn't it? You cast Mind Flayer, you play Lulu to get Mind Flayer back to hand, you cast Mind Flayer again, you've now got 2 of your opponent's cards, 2 of their forwards are now, also one of their forwards is now 5k, and it's just disgusting. Finally, Vayne. So I made a Wind Lightning kind of power screwy deck recently, and it's a lot of fun, and yeah, Vayne obviously buffs all your forwards, reduces all your opponent's forwards, you play Lulu, its power becomes 5,000, but then it's minus 2,000 power, so then it actually becomes a 3,000 power forward. And, you know, if you cast something like, let's go with Val 4 to deal 3k to your opponent's board, that forward then becomes effectively 3k, and then you cast Val 4 again, and another forward becomes 3k, and it's just, it's so easy to kill things. Anyway, moving on. Auron. So, he's a 2CP 4K wind forward. Summons abilities of your opponent must choose Auron if possible. If you control a job summoner forward or a job guardian forward other than Auron gains when Auron is, oh my god, I'm getting so tired of saying the word Auron. Put from the field into the break zone, draw 1 card. Damage 3, Auron gains 3000 power. So he is effectively Water's Charlotte. He doesn't have the damage reduction ability, but he is still a lightning rod, and I think he's really good for that. And the fact that he can potentially get you a card as well means he's kind of got that effect that your opponent doesn't want to get rid of Auron. They want to focus on other things first, but they can't because they have to focus on Auron, so yeah, nice either way. So Sin, again, if you want to be setting up for Sin's S ability, Auron is a nice lightning rod to stop your opponent from being able to get rid of Sin. When you Giga Graviton, they have to get rid of Auron first. Lena, let's say your opponent does eventually get rid of Auron, you can cast Lena to pay the 1 crystal to then bring Auron back onto the field. This would also work with the old school Lena as well, the 5 CP one. So you play her onto the field to then bring Auron in, and your opponent just can't get rid of him. Yeah, Grosh. Now, this is more of just a screw you to ice, especially with the new Terror card from Opus 15. Oh, you want to freeze all my forwards and all my backups? No, you don't. You only get to freeze Yargrosh, and you only get to freeze Auron. Yeah, there's not much more to say than that. Just, job's done. Right, next up we have Rikku, a 4CP 8k EX burst, a water forward. When Rikku attacks, choose a 1 forward opponent controls, return to its owner's hand. If you control a job summoner forward, put it on top of its owner's deck and draw 1 card instead. So, yeah, the fact that it's every time she attacks is nice, but it's quite slow. And bouncing is alright, but generally most cards, or most good cards that get played these days, have entry abilities. And you don't want to be bouncing things that have good entry abilities. So, having that summoner forward is basically essential to be attacking with Rikku, I think. Now, ultimately, Riku's good for a final push for game, potentially. You put that card back in your opponent's hand, but again, you're giving them CP to be able to cast summons that they couldn't have cast before, use abilities they couldn't have used before, so you need to be really mindful of that. But ultimately, if you can put a forward on top of your owner's deck, then that's pretty good, because you get to draw a card, and that card is just kind of ready to be that point of damage. Rydia. So, yeah, just being able to play summons super cheap, and Rydia is a really hard to get rid of. Well, not really hard to get rid of summoner, but ultimately she's probably got the summoner with the best kind of stability and hardest to get rid of. So having that Rydia kind of sat there with Rikku down, meaning that you can keep on attacking with Rikku, putting forwards on top of your opponent's deck, because Rydia is there just not dying, and casting summons for free is a lot for your opponent to have to deal with. Thief. So maybe you attack with Rikku, you get to put a forward on top of your opponent's deck, but they're still going to block and they're not going to take a point of damage. Use Thief to mill your opponent 2 cards, at which point the card that was on the field is now in the break zone. And it's kind of like a faux breaking of sorts. But yeah, and ultimately if you do mill 2 cards of the same element, you get to draw a card as well, which is always nice. Axstar. So yeah, just being able to have Rikku in the damage ready for you to trigger with Axstar as well, putting forward on top of your opponent's deck, drawing you cards, not to mention that at damage 3, Axstar also gets to set your card as well, is always nice. Wakka, I love Wakka, I love this card. So he's a 2CP 5k. You can remove 3 real counters from Wakka to use Wakka's special ability without paying the cost. When Wakka or a category 10 forward enters your field, place 1 real counter on Wakka, and then the Auroch Spirit S ability, which is an S and 1 water, choose 1 forward, loses all its abilities until the end of the turn, break it. So, a nice little effect. The one problem is the fact that there isn't a huge amount of... 10 likes to go super tribal anyway, which is always nice, but there aren't a huge amount of acceleration cards in 10. So something like Yuna might be good, because if you've got Wakka on the field already, he's got 1 counter. You play Yuna to then play another Gullwing, so probably Pain or Rikku. That then gets Wakka to 3 counters, which is really good, and then you can go and break something if your opponent tries to do anything. Kimahri! So you want Wakka to try and stay alive, so play Kimahri onto the field, and Wakka being a job guardian reduces Kimahri's cost as well, which is always nice, and then Kimahri will protect Wakka, meaning that Wakka's more likely to get his S off. Also, fun fact about Kimahri is that if you have Kimahri and the starter deck Auron on the field, Auron will say, you have to target me, but Kimahri says, no, you can't target him, and cannot always overwrites must. So ultimately, you can't target Auron, even though you must target Auron. Now, Kimahri obviously doesn't protect himself, so what this actually effectively does is create... Sorry, I should have done this with the Auron section, shouldn't I? But what this effectively means is the fact that you have to get rid of Kimahri, to then get rid of Auron, to then get rid of Wakka. Pain. So, playing Pain on the field gets you another real counter to then search you that Yuna or Rikku card. It could be the 2CP, the Opus 2 Yuna that I just talked about, to then play her onto the field, to then play Rikku onto the field, which would be pretty fun as well. And that would mean Wakka actually has 4 real counters, which means you only need 2 more to be able to use his S ability twice. Tidus. So the cost required to cast Tidus is reduced by 1 for each category 10 forward you control. And then his EX burst, when Tidus enters the field, you may search for one card named Jecht, excuse me, card named Yuna or card named Wakka and add it to your hand. When Tidus attacks all the forwards you control, gain plus 2000 power until the end of the turn. He's a 3 CP, 7k light forward. So it's kind of like a smaller version of Rain, but the fact he searches, and searching is just so important in the deck. Consistency is paramount in a good deck, and him being or becoming potentially cheaper as well as searching is just awesome. So Scholar, this might seem like a bit of a strange one, but ultimately, let's say you get to play Tidus onto the field for free. You then get to search a card to hand. You then use Scholar to bounce Tidus back to hand and play him for free again. You then have got 2 cards for hand and play Tidus on the field for free just for breaking it back up. That's not too bad. Wakka! I'm not sure if I still prefer this Wakka because his S ability doesn't break something, but he does have more survivability, and Tidus and Wakka's effects on attack are similar as well. So it means that you can be attacking and buffing things, which is always nice, and not to mention the fact that Wakka would actually reduce the cost of Tidus coming onto the field as well. But then, yeah, Tidus comes onto the field for, let's say, 2 CP. That gets you S fodder for the status reels to then use that effect as well. Jecht. So Jecht block is a fantastic S ability. Choose any number of summons, auto abilities, or action abilities, or special abilities, cancel their effects. It's hilarious. And Tidus coming onto the field just to get that S ready, just for your opponent to be like, I can't do anything anymore, because if a stack happens, it's cancelled. Also, as a side note, do you think that Jecht's S ability, or Jecht block, should have been named Object, or Objection? Sorry. And last but not least, Sin. So a 9 CP, 10,000 power forward. When Sin is added to your hand from the deck due to a search effect, you may pay 3 CP. When you do so, choose one forward, break it. And then when Sin enters your field, break all the forwards other than Sin. If you have received 6 points of damage, break all the forwards your opponent controls instead. So a very unique effect in the fact that if you search Sin to your hand, you get to break something. That's the first really we've seen of any effect like that. But also, excuse me, the fact that at damage 6 you get to break all your opponent's forwards but keep all yours is super strong as well, and a very nice comeback mechanic. Spiritus. So yeah, just play Spiritus on the field to get Sin to hand. You then pay 3 CP to break the forward your opponent controls, and then when you do play Sin, you get to break all your forwards your opponent controls anyway. So it's just a horrible doubling down for your opponent. They're like, oh, you're killing something, and now you also get to kill stuff when you play Sin as well. So they just have to really consider, like, if they don't have a deck that's geared towards getting rid of or stopping auto abilities or making your opponents or making your forwards not die, yeah, this kind of sucks. Now obviously you're paying 7 for Spiritus, which, you know, is the same as Shantoto really, so realistically, is playing Shantoto the better card here? Potentially, maybe, but it depends what kind of deck you're running. And ultimately, the fact that adding adding Sin to your hand is 2 CP less, even though it's going to be really hard to use Sin because it's a dark card. Yeah, it just means he's a little bit more value. Imperio, another card that I've never really seen played, but when Imperio is put from the field into the break zone, you may search for one dark forward and add it to your hand. So let's say your opponent attacks, you block with Imperio, you get to search Sin to hand, you pay 3, you then get to break something. So even if the forward that Imperio blocked didn't die, which it probably wouldn't because Imperio is only a 6k, it means that you get to break it regardless. Varus. When Varus enters the field, if the cost to play Varus was paid with CP of exactly 3 different elements, you may search one card and add it to your hand. So, yeah, not fantastic, but ultimately, if you're an Ice Earth, not hard to hit that prerequisite, and just Tricolor's not hard to play these days anyway. So, yeah, play Varus onto the field, search yourself for Sin, pay 3 more CP to break something. And then final Moogle 11. a very powerful card in its own right regardless, and that with Robel Akbel, where every card, well, every turn you get to get Moogle back to your hand, which allows you to search again, and yeah, gets into your hand, break something. So the 10 custom starter deck I think is really strong, has some incredibly powerful cards in there. Lulu is just really good, really good. It's gonna be a lot of fun to play with her, but it's also gonna be disgusting to play against her. She's gonna be a massive pain, but yeah, is what it is. Something that with a lot of the spoilers that are coming out now, there's stuff like the new Cecil, which makes it so that target stuff your opponent has to pay, otherwise they get cancelled, and just a lot of the new cards in this set I feel are strong, but all this is really going to do is make people double down on uninteractive water destruction, so stuff like Atomos and Famfrit or Luzaf, and board wipes, so stuff like Susano and Shantoto. Not that people aren't already doubling down on that stuff already, but I don't want people to become too... I don't want people to just only play that stuff because that's all that really works. You know, stuff like wind and lightning are really strong, don't get me wrong. But when you start seeing stuff that does this as well, where you're just like removing stuff without having to even do anything, like be able to cast Atomos for only 1 CP when you've got Yuna and Yunalesca on the field, it's just, no, I don't like it. But yeah, ultimately that is the state of the game at the moment, but that doesn't mean it's not fun. It just, you have to find intuitive ways to be able to counter it. But yeah, let me know what you guys think of this starter deck. I haven't had a chance to play with it yet, but I'm really looking forward to, and it's going to be great, I think. It's going to be a lot of fun. But yeah, let me know what you guys think of the starter deck. Let me know what some of the silly combos you've come up with are as well. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, be lucky, and I'll see you in the next video.